point of views. So first
Delight.
one is,
Yeah. Yeah.
were you always confident? What was your thinking when you started? Like some people are naturally a bit confident. Some people are shy, but they work and become confident. What was your beginning?
So I was never a confident person as a youngster. I was very, very shy. And my nature, I'm actually very introverted by nature. And if we'd been talking, 20, 30 years ago, I would never have believed you if I'd said I would be speaking on big stages or addressing audiences. I think we find the ability through other things. So I came to speaking by my singing, by my work, and got comfortable with speaking on stage and using microphones and speaking to an audience, and found learned the skills to speak. And it's one of those things, it's something that I deliver in the workshops that I work on as well. If you can build the skills, if you can have the speak performance skills to be able to have the confidence to deliver, then you overcome the shyness. And you'll find that many people who are speakers are introverts. We have this ability to go on stage or to lead the workshop and be the personality on screen or the personality in the room. But then when it's over, we need to go back home again and sit quietly in the corner for a day or two and get our energy back. And you'll find that's quite common in people who speak. Yeah.
Uh, for me, when I was 12 or 13, I was a shy. For me, the shyness was because of language. So Hindi is our native language, but the language used in our schools and all the formal meetings is English.
Mm-hmm.
So I was not very comfortable with English initially. Even now, there is some accent, Hindi accent that mixes with my English. So, but I participated in theater, lots of theater. I did theater for 5, 6, 7 years.
Okay.
That made me comfortable on stage. So now, if I say that I am never nervous, then I would be lying. But that has helped a lot with my confidence.
Yes. And we need the day when we say, oh, I'm not nervous, I can just do it, is a day, I think, when we probably become so boring that nobody will want to listen to us. We need that energy to every time we speak, whether it's in the room or virtually, and so much is now virtual. You're on stage, as in this background. Every time you speak, you are performing. So it is a performance, and the build up to that for performance is just as important as the performance in itself. How do you prepare, both in terms of your own physiology, your breathing, your ability to communicate, let alone the content and the ability to deliver. So yes, that theatre experience, fantastic, because I would agree with that. I spend a lot of my time singing, just an amateur way, but got used to emceeing the Leith Hill Musical Festival, which is a big choral event in my locality. And I got used to standing on a stage and commanding a hall of 600 people through the experience of being in that theatre environment. I agree, the theatre environment is so important.
I really love the point when you said every speech is a performance.
Mm.
Because when we start thinking that way, then we are committed to deliver quality to the audience. If we
Yes.
do not think of it as a performance, then we feel that the audience is obliged to hear us. We get that false mentality. So I really love that point. Thank you so much, sir. The
And
second question,
yeah,
yeah, please continue. Please continue.
no, okay, just to expand that slightly, you're right. The audience, they have no interest in you whatsoever when you first appear, either in the room or on screen. They're there to find something that's of interest to them, that might appeal to them in what you say, but they probably don't know you. They have no interest in you. So a speaker that thinks that the audience is going to sit there and dutifully listen to them is in la la land. Your job, our job as speakers, is to be so engaging, so compelling, that the audience is really with us and wants to hear more because we've captured their hearts on something and we're appealing to them in their, their innermost souls, and we're touching them with some, not if the risk for any speech these days or any communication is it's an information dump. We get people's attention and then we dump information on them because we think that's what the audience wants. No, they don't. Nobody remembers facts and figures. Okay, maybe accountants do, but most people don't remember facts and figures. They remember stories and what was the visceral experience, what emotional hook got them and took you with them as a speaker. Yeah, I'm with you. Yeah.
Yes, sir. Now we come to the skills. Now, different people struggle on different skills. For example, my biggest struggle was with the language. Some people struggle with just getting on the stage because it is their biggest nightmare. Some people struggle with voice modulation. Some people struggle with hand gestures. So after you became comfortable on stage, what was your biggest struggle and how did you overcome that?
That's an interesting one, actually. I think my biggest struggle as I got into, so sort of brief background to introduce that, I spent 40 years, 4 decades in business, in commercial life. So I'm an ex-bank manager by background, an ex-business development manager. And it was only after that that I set up this business, which is about building people's speak performance skills. So with that as the background, I think my biggest challenge at that point was imposter syndrome, actually, thinking that actually everyone else in my field was 10 times better than I was, that because they probably had 3 university degrees, a PhD, and had written 6 books, that's what I needed to be in order to build the business that I've built in recent years. And it took a while to realize that, yeah, they have a set of academic skills that I do not have. I did not have that university education. But my niche is the performance skills based on 40 years of doing it, and your donkey's years of singing with all the voice skills and the performance skills that we've just been talking about. So it took a while for me to understand where my niche is in a world where those who do have all the qualifications and all the books behind their name can sometimes see that can sometimes seem to be the thing that you've got to do yourself, but you haven't. You just got to find your niche. So I think that was my biggest challenge at the time.
Great point. Something I was not expecting, actually.
Okay.
So when did you realize that you have enough knowledge and you can start helping others? When was the time when you said that, okay, now I have enough knowledge, now I have enough experience, I have enough skills, now I can help others improve? When was that time?
I'm not sure we ever think we have enough knowledge, because even though I'm mid-60s, I'm still learning all the time. The point when, so it was actually a redundancy that got me that point. So 40 years of commercial life, 3 redundancies. I've had some pretty interesting times in working with it. And it was the last redundancy, which would be 10 years ago, 9-10 years ago, and trying to get another role. I thought I had to go and get another job, but by then I was late 50s. And the business coach who was helping me apply for jobs, we'd had hundreds of applications, and he said, well, look, what else can you do? Because ageism is kicking in. Who's going to employ you at that age? I thought, well, I've been emceeing in the Dorking halls to an audience of 600 people for years. I've been running workshops in my employed life for years. I've been singing for years. So all the, as I say, the physiology skills, the voice skills, I've got all those. Why don't I try helping people with what I know how to do? So that was the point where I thought that just maybe I've got some skills that I can impart to other people, just in a small way, just to see how it goes. And that's when this business started. So that was the point when I really appreciated that I had the skills that I'd learned through the university of life to be able to help other people with. But in what I've done since then is really hone those skills, build those skills. Yes, authored a book myself, and there's a new virtual workshop that I've just been building with my publishers, which goes really, really deeply into presenting, into the skills of performance, into analyzing your audience, into not only just engaging the audience, but compelling, haunting, and obsessing them, and all the script writing skills that you need behind that. So 10 years after that experience of thinking, I know how to help people, I'm now really deeply building the business that really goes into the deep skills. So the short answer to your question is 10 years ago, realized actually I've got something I can help people with, but now 10 years later, even deeper set of skills that I can impart to people, and the sky's the limit. You know, that I'll keep going forever.
Great attitude. For me, the starting was a debate. There was a debate on terrorism in the Middle East in the school, and the teacher forced me. When I was a teenager, I had behavior issues. I was a very aggressive teenager, and I loved to argue and debate and all those things. So teacher said, go and debate on this. And I was like, no, I'm not interested. Teacher said, you have to. Then she forced me, and I did not know I could do that, but I shattered all the other teams and all the people. So then one of the senior teachers came to me and said, when you speak on the stage, there is something different about you. You should focus on this. So at that time, I knew that this is my talent, or say something that I should pursue in life. And after I started doing it, I started enjoying it. And I thought that I'll do this forever. I'll learn about this forever. So that was starting point.
And there's a magic, isn't there? Once you are performing on stage, and when you've got the audience in your hands, there's a moment that I love. So part of the Leith Hill Musical Festival, which is my personal singing background here, we have a youth day, and I've often emceed that. And there's a very special moment. It's 10 seconds to 9 o'clock, because the day is going to begin at 9 o'clock. And the Dorking Halls is absolutely packed to the roof with young voices, with parents, with teachers, with helpers, because they're coming to sing in a competition. And it's a cacophony of noise. It's just a babble of voices, all excited voices. And there's an absolute magic to walking slowly to the center of the stage to the microphone. Not a fast, quick walk, but a slow filling the stage with your presence walk, walking up to the microphone, not saying a word, maybe the occasional to some of the young people in the front row, and they sort of go quiet and nod. And it never fails. Within 9 or 10 seconds, 600 people have gone from a cacophony of rabblous noise to absolute pin drop silence. And then you hold the audience for another couple of seconds in the palm of your hand in silence. And that is one of the most magic moments in the world. And only at that point do you begin with, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. And it's fantastic, isn't it? That experience of having an audience in the palm of your hands as a speaker is second to none. Yeah.
It's actually a powerful experience. And the book that I'm thinking about writing, the title of that would be Public Speaking, a Superpower. Public speaking is actually a superpower that has been used by people for centuries, from Socrates to Adolf Hitler to Martin Luther King. Everybody used public speaking for their causes. Some used it in a good way, some used it in a very, very bad way. So a superpower, if falls into wrong hands, then it can have, we have seen this in World War II. What happened?
I agree. Yeah, it is a superpower. It's the performance abilities. You remind me, so I'm just leaning across because you remind me, the title of my book is Speak Performance, because it's all about the performance skills. Yeah. Actually, you just reminded me, you're talking about what triggered you into beginning to speak. I'd almost forgotten. that I was a young man in the bank, so late 20s, many years ago. And I remember I was walking down the corridor, and the personnel manager of the bit of the bank I was in grabbed me by the arm and said, if you want to be a manager, Mr. Ray, you will join the British Junior Chamber of Commerce, which still is a young management training organization. So I joined. And within about 3 minutes of joining, the people in that group said, Ges, we take part in national public speaking competitions. We're putting you forward for them. What? So I had no choice in the matter. I was too young and naive to know how to say no, but I found myself being put through training programs and then going into public speaking competitions back in the late 1970s, early 1980s. And that was a really scary experience. But when you realize you can do it, that's magic, isn't it? That is magic.
Mr. Ray, how much time do you take to prepare for a presentation? Considering that it is an important presentation from business point of view, and it is, let's assume, 1 hour long. So how much time do you take to prepare for a speech?
That's a very good question. I'll give you an example from those public speaking competitions that I used to do many years ago. The maxim we worked to at the time, that every minute of a speech required a week's worth of preparation. So they were 7-minute competition speeches. So I would spend probably 2 months preparing for a 7-minute speech. And these were in the days there was no internet, there was no mobile phones, all you had was typewriters and pen and paper. So a lot of time. So that's an example of my background as to where my training came from in preparation. So the answer to your question, if I've got a really important speech to deliver, or a workshop or a version of that, the preparation could actually be up to a year. Because what I'd be doing is knowing that at some stage I want to deliver it to perfection, I will be using little snippets of it in other workshops, just testing things out, see how the audience reacts to it. I will be applying within organizations such as the Professional Speaking Association, where I'm a member, to do a slot at a meeting somewhere, to try out some more bits in a relatively safe environment, because that organization is a brilliant organization for trying things out for new and getting audience feedback. And just keep incorporating bits of that speech or bits of that workshop content into other events that I'm running, so that I just get so comfortable with it that, I'll always have perhaps my notes in my pocket or something on the table, simply because that's my nature. I like to have that fallback. But knowing that everything in that talk has been tried out and tested in everything from a 5-minute version to a half-hour version to a 2-hour into a workshop with Zoom breakout sessions as well. So that when I come to the event that to me is the big one, I just know that it's going to work because it's been so rehearsed. So that's a very long answer to your question. But for me, preparation is the absolute key. So months and months, sometimes up to a year in preparation for the big event where I want it to, where I know it's got to land. And the preparation is in rehearsing it, not just in my delivery, but in rehearsing how it lands with the audience and what needs to be tweaked, what they liked, what they didn't, and what needs to be altered. So a huge amount of preparation for me.
Again, something that I was not expecting. I was expecting something around a week or 2 weeks, but 1 year is a very long time. When you're talking to a guy who is 22 years old, 1 year sounds like a long time.
Well, I'm 65, so it's not so much to me.
Uh, what I have seen in my short experience as a speaker, longer speeches and workshops require less effort to prepare. Shorter speeches are actually harder to prepare. When I have to present for only 5 minutes, I have to give all the, you know, the best thing in those 5 minutes. When I have hours, maybe 2 or 3 hours, I can just take the audience on a journey with me and share life stories and philosophies and all those things. But if I have 5 to 7 minutes, that is really, really hard to prepare and to deliver. This is what I have experienced till now. Maybe my perspective can change or not change, but this is my experience till now.
And I would absolutely agree with that. And what that translates into is in communicating on screen, communicating virtually, because this is the way the world is going to be for the foreseeable future, isn't it? But yes, we'll get back in the room, and I've had a few events where we've been back actually, shaking hands and looking at people in the eye. Oh, it's wonderful. But the business world has realized that virtual communications are so much more efficient, so much more cost effective than meeting in the room. Yeah, it'll happen. Teams will get together for their, to meet each other again. But so much now is via screen and will continue to be so. And that point you absolutely rightly made about the intensity of a short presentation. When we're delivering on screen, that same ethos applies. The old days of saying, oh yeah, I'll deliver a 45-minute presentation. I'll walk into the room, I'll put the slides up and I'll chat to it for 45 minutes. If you try that on screen, people will switch their cameras off and go make a cup of tea. They might be polite to you and stay on, but they're not going to listen if they have to. We now have to have the skills, yes, to engage, to get people's attention, but then we've got to compel them to listen and then haunt them with an emotional attachment that says they really are hooked and they do want to stay with us, and then absolutely stay with you forever. The engage, compel, haunt, and obsess. We've got to go beyond engaging, compelling, and haunting, and now we've got to obsess them so that we are in their transmedia bubble. You and I and everyone watching this, we live in our own little worlds, and it's even more of our own little world now that we're on screen much of our lives. The adverts that come in, the news feeds, the RSS feeds that come in, they're all things that are part of your world. As a speaker, we've got to get into the worlds of our audience, and we want our audience to want us to be in there. Otherwise, they'll just dismiss us. That you typify that by your statement about how the effort you need to put into a 4 or 5 minute presentation is so much more than a long workshop. And that ethos we have to continue when delivering on screen. So if we're going to deliver a session on screen, we've got to engage, compel, haunt, and obsess them all the way through. Otherwise we're just bland, and we're no different to all the other millions of people who are trying to speak online as well. We just get forgotten. We need to stand out and be remembered. We need to be so engaging, so compelling, so haunting, so obsessing that we live in their transmedia bubble for the rest of their lives.
Great points. From your point, my next question comes from there. I am on stage, I'm speaking, and I notice that my audience is getting distracted. Most of them have stopped listening to me, or I'm in an online mode delivering something, and I noticed that most of my audience members have switched on off their cameras, and maybe they are scrolling social media and doing that. So I noticed that my audience is getting distracted. Do you have any tricks to get their attention immediately, or at least attention of most of the people immediately? Like something that maybe some people, like I knew a speaker, whenever he noticed that people are getting distracted, he would say, "Ah!" Everyone would look at him, and then he would say, "Now keep looking at me." So someone would just pause. They would just stop speaking, and when everyone would look at them again, then they would continue speaking. So do you have some kind of trick like that?
So what we have to do, and it comes back to engage, compel, haunt, and obsess. What we've got to do is create some engagement with the audience that actually appeals to the ancient part of their brain, to your amygdala, deep in your ancient brain, where it's fight and flight and survival that we're touching on. So we want to create a reaction with our audience, which is the equivalent to them being in fear of their lives when, you know, thousands of years ago, they were actually perhaps being hunted on the savannah by some wild animals. We want to create something that replicates that in a, you know, we're not going to set loose some wild animals on them, but we want their brain to go, whoa, what just happened? I've got to pay attention. So that's what we've got to be able to do to come back to engaging the audience. Now, it could be exactly as you say, it could be using a change of voice tones. So we're talking in a quiet, comfortable voice tone. But if I suddenly go, right, it's now time, we've got to do, if I suddenly change the voice tone, or if I go use something like you just said, you know, silence is an incredibly effective tool. If we're holding the stage, it doesn't work so much virtually, we'll come to that in a minute, but if you're in the room holding silence and having the confidence to know that that room is going to turn silent because people are going to get embarrassed that they're talking. So we wait until the room goes silent, and then we've got their attention again. So something like that that catches their attention. On screen, it might be just changing the background to make it incredibly bright colors to catch their attention, or using something like a, you know, a short video clip that we've got in the background just to bring their attention, or even taking them to, my preference personally is to take them to something that engages them. So breakout rooms on Zoom. For me, breakout rooms on Zoom are brilliant because you get them back into talking, you know, 2 or 3 people or 4 or 5 people in a group and chatting about the topic. There is the risk that people who switch their cameras off are now going to leave the meeting. But that leads on to perhaps to the point of being a speaker. We feel when we're speaking that absolutely everybody has got to love us 100% of the time. We want to be loved and adored by the whole of the audience. But the reality of any audience is that we're going to have our complete advocates who are absolutely with us every moment. We're going to have people who are interested, and we're going to have a few that probably were there because their boss told them to be there and are determined not to be interested because they want to show the world that they just don't care. So if we lose a few of those, okay, we lose them. But now we keep the ones who are interested. So to wrap that up, it's about using something that is an engagement technique that brings them back into the room because we made their brain go, whoa, what's happened? I've missed something really interesting. I've got to come, I need to come back and pay attention. So that's less actually providing you with a list of tips and techniques. You can find those off of, you know, articles and books. There's a brilliant book by a colleague of mine, Jackie Barry, called Unboring, which he's only just published, and it's a book packed full of tips for online tricks and communication techniques for getting people engaged. But it's about an engagement technique that will make the ancient part of their brain go, I've got to pay attention again.
Is memorizing a speech good idea? So many top speaking coaches in the world are very much against memorizing. And we actually, when we have to give 1 or 2 hour speech or workshop, we actually cannot memorize. We have to memorize the main points, and then we have to just expand based on our knowledge and experience. But can memorizing be a good thing in some situations? For example, a TED talk.
Right. So a TED talk, you have got to, because interesting, one of my roles is actually as an advisor and coach on TEDx Woking, which is one of the local TEDx's to me. So we're working with people who want to do their TEDx talk, and the reality is you've only got, you know, 14 to 18 minutes, and you've got to really ram it home in that time. So to me, it's less about memorizing it word for word, because then there's a risk that you just become, it sounds as though you're delivering it by rote. It can be a bit boring, can't it? It's more about the principle that we talked about a few minutes ago of spending, you know, many months, up to a year, rehearsing content so that you know it so well that you know exactly where you are at any point in it. You've got 4 sections to deliver, and you know that at the end of section 3 you're going to be at roughly at this particular time. and you know the content, because your language might change depending on who's in the room. You might be able to tweak it. You've got to know it so well that you can tweak it if needed or change bits around, knowing how it's affecting your timing. So that's not memorizing by rote. It's about knowing it inside out, backwards and upside down, so that you can play with it and enjoy it and still finish on time.
Any rituals do you perform before going for a presentation, an important presentation? Some
Sorry.
people, any rituals
Oh,
or
yes.
habits?
Absolutely.
Some people do something like this before going to speaking. Do you have any rituals?
I definitely do. So rituals beforehand, absolutely I do. And this is another interesting point about speaking, isn't it? If you ask a top sports person, would they go straight out onto the pitch on a cold November morning without doing any stretching, any warm-up exercises? They would say, no, of course not, because they know that they're going to get injured the moment that they start performing at 100% of their sport. And yet, for some reason, often in business, people think, oh, yeah, okay, I've got a presentation at 9 o'clock. That's absolutely fine. And they turn up either on screen or in the room and then get the oh, yeah, frog in the throat. Oh, excuse me. And have to grab a glass of water, and then it gives out on them 20 minutes later. As speakers, we have to remember that this is quite a delicate instrument that we've got here, and it needs to be properly warmed up before we begin. So when in my singing rehearsals with my choir, we will spend the first 15, 20 minutes of the rehearsal just doing warm-up exercises. And if you go to a concert where there are singers and go to backstage to the green room before they come on stage, you'll hear the weirdest sets of noises that they worked on to warm up this voice. So that's a long answer to your question. My pre-speaking rituals are based on my singing knowledge over many years of amateur singing, and it's warm-up exercises. It might be a simple thing like a good yawn, which at least stretches things out, or beginning just stretching the voice to get it to where it needs to be. And then taking the sounds, we use the mask of our face and the positions of our head. So placing vowels and consonants, A, E, R, O, U, or K, P, T, Th, F, getting the lips and teeth properly warmed up. Also, where do you want to place the sound to help your voice match the message that you're delivering? So if you're delivering an incredibly exciting point, that is really the absolute denouement of your talk, you're taking the sound to the front of your mask. It's out your eyes, it's out your eyebrows. Whereas if it's a really personal story that you're delivering, if it's something that's got a really tragic element to it, you're speaking from the heart, but you're actually taking the sound to the back of your throat, the back of your neck, and creating the sound that you would if you were emotionally engaged in something. So the preparation of your voice and your physiology, breathing exercises. How many speakers do proper deep breathing exercises before they go out and perform, either in the room or on screen? Not many, as many as should, I would suggest. But if you are prepared with your breathing before you deliver on screen, your voice is now in the position that you want it to be. You are now in control of your breathing. It makes so much difference. So my ritual is voice warm-up techniques from my world of singing, and that's what I coach people in my workshops as well.
Great. Is there something that you notice that many people do on stage and they think that it is cool, but actually it is not? After years of experience, you think that this doesn't work. Give an example. Tony Robbins is a very big name in the field of public speaking, and he has a style that he shouts and he creates this environment and he fills the whole stadium with energy. So many people try to copy him. They try to be Tony Robbins, and in that process, they lose the originality. And they are shouting without any reason. The topic doesn't need them to shout, but they do, and this takes away the soul from their performance. Or something like some people do some gestures or some voice modulation, and it's actually bad, but they think most of the people think that it's good. Do you have anything like that in mind?
Well, you hit on a very key point there, that we often look at other speakers and think, oh, I need to be like them because they've got a good name, but their style may not be the style that works for you. So another reason I love being in the Professional Speaking Association here in the UK is because when we go to conferences, okay, we've had a bit of a dearth on conferences for a year or two, but they're coming back. We'll see a range of speakers on stage, and we'll look at some and think, oh, that I really like that. That works. That would work for me. Or we'll see others and we'll go, that works for them, but that's not for me. So to see how other speakers engage and how they work with their audience is a really useful experience. But that's a very key point. Trying to copy others just because you think you should behave like them doesn't necessarily work. And it comes back to the principle, I think, for all speakers, that it's not about us. Is, you know, we're almost irrelevant to the whole situation. It's about the audience and what is right for that audience and what are they enjoying, what are they taking away. It may be that a speaker has peculiar voice tics or odd things that they do with their speech, or as you say, with their hands and gestures. Yeah. Some people like to stride around the stage, and that may work for some audiences. For others, it probably doesn't. It puts them off. So it's about understanding your audience. What is it that they want to get from the event that you're speaking at? And having the confidence in your own skills and your own personality in order to deliver to that audience. I mean, one very practical thing that so many get wrong is actually the use of the mic. And this comes down to preparation and rehearsal. I'm sure you or I, if we were going to speak physically at a venue, as I was last week, I was the chair, the panel moderator for a big event, which was part of International Women's Day. So the panel was four very senior, very powerful women, and my job was simply to keep the conversation flowing, make sure the questions got asked and answered, the time was shared, etc. But even with a really powerful senior group of people, it's always worth the preparation for using the mic. So I got there early to check out what the microphone system was in a commercial venue. And they were going to have to use a handheld mic, but of course it was a directional mic. So if you use a directional mic properly and you speak into it, everything works. If, as many people do because they haven't rehearsed it, they hold it like this with the sound going over the top, I'm sure you know it doesn't work. And those basic fundamental mistakes of not understanding the technology that's in use, the dynamics of the room, how everything is set out. Those, to me, are the mistakes that I see people make, and that is covered by the preparation, getting to the event early, or if it's an on-screen event, checking out the tech with the organizers, running a rehearsal beforehand to make sure everything works properly. And that's perhaps one of my biggest bugbears when I see someone from the world of business, which is my world, and they've got, you know, it's going to be interesting because they're incredibly experienced, and they stand in the corner of the stage and hold the mic like this, and nobody can properly hear them. You think, why didn't you just arrive half an hour earlier and do a bit of prep? It makes so much difference.
I understood that, and I noted down some points. And the best sentence I loved was, "We are irrelevant." And I absolutely agree. Absolutely. It's all about the audience. So if you have to give one piece of advice in one sentence to an 18-year-old guy diving into the field of public speaking, what that one sentence would be?
First one would be just do it, because at 18,
Thank you.
at 18, I think people are very forgiving. They if you make a mistake, you're not gonna. If you were 58 and you made a complete mess of it, then maybe people might look at you a bit differently. But at 18, just go and do it. Make the mistakes. You take me back again to actually the very first public speaking event I did when I got thrown into it by the bank and the public speaking competition. So I was early mid-20s at that point, and I had to go at the competition. And I'll always remember the words of the of one of the judges, because obviously I'd made a complete mess of the whole thing. And he came up to me and he said, of all the people here today, I think you have learned the most. And that was quite an interesting point. And I learned a fantastic amount by making every mistake under the sun. Because if I'd gone in thinking I was absolute God's gift to speaking, I'd have probably gone out still thinking I was and not learned anything. But so my key point is just go and try it, just go and do it. Accept that mistakes are going to be made, but then work on it. Find people that you identify with. You can do all the YouTube research and find other speakers. Don't necessarily dive in to pay a lot of money for a course that might not work for you, because it just might not be your style. Find people that you think, actually, I can get on with the way that person, the way he or she works. I can get on with that, and I like what they're doing. Let's see if they've got a course or a workshop that I can sign up to learn more or to do more. So go out there and do it, but then take courses and workshops to build up your skills. I see you had, Rohan, you got a certificate on your LinkedIn page. Brilliant. And also join organizations that will support you. You mentioned Toastmasters. I mean, Toastmasters is international and is brilliant for learning to speak, for building up the speaking skills. My organization is the Professional Speaking Association, which is about the business of speaking. We'll learn other people's business models and see lots of examples of speaking around the world. So there are three things. Just go and do it. Don't be afraid to go and learn more, to learn more skills and build up your confidence in your abilities, and join organizations that will support you and help you, because otherwise you feel alone. Be amongst colleagues who are trying to do the same thing.
Now we are in the last series of questions. So let's come to the opposite of prepared speaking. You said that preparation is a must. You prepare a lot. Opposite, impromptu speaking. Maybe a question and answer session. How to deal with that? And with that question, I want to answer you one more question, that sometimes we get some audience members who might have a fight with their wife or they must be in a bad mood, and they try everything to mess with the speaker. They ask bad questions and they argue and they debate. So for a shy person who is just starting the public speaking, who has less confidence, this can be a nightmare actually. So how to deal with such people and how to deal with impromptu speaking?
Impromptu speaking. So impromptu speaking is certainly a skill, but there are techniques, or there are scripting skills available for you. So, for example, on the online masterclass that I've been building with my publishers, we cover 26 scripting skills. If you've got a series of skills in your toolkit to do with putting scripts together, and you have prepared scripts, little vignettes, little miniature scripts that you can bring out at any moment. So someone says, for example, we were talking about how to keep an audience with you. So for me, the phraseology around engage, compel, haunt, and obsess your audiences is part of my world, and I have 3 or 4, not delivered verbatim scripts, but little conversation pieces that I can bring in as examples that set the picture for that. So if you have little short scripts that you have prepared, it's deep in your memory banks, so that when a topic comes up, you are comfortable in bringing that out and adapting it to fit the situation. So that's my answer to impromptu speaking, having scripting skills that enable you to create things on the spot. So for example, someone asks you a question that you know the answer to, but you want to make more impact on it. So there is one simple technique of going from, you know, a small, gentle description and saying, but then building up in something really powerful and amazing, and isn't this incredible? And then bring it back to the original point again. Now that's a very simple overlay on perhaps 3 or 4 sentences that you were going to say anyway, but you just use a scripting technique to actually get people on board with it. Or you want to get people really, really hooked on what you're saying. Any script writer for any decent TV or Netflix series will appeal to basic survival instincts. So if you describe something where actually the person you're talking about is in a really dangerous situation and they're going to run out of breath very shortly, because these things are happening and there's a risk to their life and their survival, what happens is the audience comes with you, because you're getting to their really fundamental human requirements of being able to breathe, and they're with you. They're holding their breath at that point if you scripted it in that style. So first point to answer there is having scripting skills that enable you to take anything and put a technique around it that is a scripting skill, because you know it's going to work. And then having miniature scripts in the back of your head that you can just pull out of your toolkit at any moment to deliver. To your second point, that's an interesting one, where audiences are trying to scan you, trying to get rid of you, just trying to demolish you. If it's on screen, you try and encourage that, but you've always got the ability as the person controlling it to actually remove them from the meeting. And if they're in the room, of course you want to have them involved, because you want it to be interesting. So my way of dealing would be to, again, audience engagement, perhaps get questions flowing, or actually identify them and throw a question at them that they could that is going to land with them and maybe could turn the audience against them. But the ultimate weapon, of course, is actually asking them to leave or having them removed by the organizer. That's perfectly, you have the right to do that if they are causing problems for you and the audience. But the way to do it is to ensure that the audience is on your side, because they are creating problems for the rest of your audience, and then they'll be with you when that person gets removed.
What you said just now is covered in a book that I read recently. It's called Confessions of a Public Speaker. So,
okay.
Yeah, the author, I am not able to recall the name exactly, but he says that when an audience member is causing problems, then you can ask them to leave politely so that other members of the audience are on your side. So this is exactly what is written there. So I wanted to get another point of view, and you gave me exactly that. Another point of view that I got from a podcast that I was listening recently is Think Fast, Act Smart by Stanford University. And Matt Abrahams is the guy who hosts that podcast. He is also a very big name in public speaking. So he says that a person who is arguing with you or trying to demolish you is your champion. If you are able to answer to him correctly, that instantly boosts your credibility and engages other members of the audience, because people love conflict. So their attention would be on you. And if you are able to shut up that guy with reason, with politeness, then you will become the champion in the eyes of audience. So that is a very big opportunity. So again, a very good point of view from all these experts. So I'm trying to actually collect all these point of views and make something very easy to understand for a young person. So my second last question would be some books, videos, YouTube channels, or podcasts that have helped you and you would like to recommend to the audience and me regarding this public speaking, or in general, in life, in success, anything like that. So here we do not have any foundation of the topic. Any books, videos, YouTube channels, or podcasts that you would like to recommend, they can be related to public speaking or Anything in general.
Anything. Well, podcasts have actually exploded, haven't they? Particularly in lockdown. And there's a colleague of mine called Amy Rowlinson. So that's Amy, A-M-Y, Rowlinson, Rowlinson. She started a podcast series at the beginning of lockdown. Not just but based on years of research and experience. So, and it's hundreds and hundreds of episodes in, and I was privileged to be one of the guests on there in the early days. And I really love listening to hers because she gets really interesting people on there. So in terms of podcast, Amy Rowlinson is definitely one that I like listening to. But obviously that's a UK based one and a UK audience, although she's in quite a few countries now. In terms of publications, for me, it's more being aware of the way I like to learn is from experience of other people. So for me, one of the reasons I mentioned the Professional Speaking Association was because by going to conferences, I can actually experience how people present and what their content is. So for me, and other people may feel the same, if you're not a particular bookworm or it doesn't do it for you particularly, then I'd recommend going to events and experiencing them, because that's the way I like to learn. I'm a performer at heart, and I learn from other people's performances. I think that's probably my best suggestion. For certainly that's what works for me, rather than studying books. I'm not great at studying books, I'll admit.
Understood. I am actually a bookworm. I read one book in 2 days. And that type of not just in public speaking, like on different topics of life, philosophy, everything, business. I read that a lot. Any other person that you feel I should interview? Like, it would be an interview very similar to we had just now, and this is the last question. So do you have any person in mind whose point of view might be very important for this project and this book that I am doing?
Yeah. Well, my publisher, actually, a chap called Richard Hagen, Hagen, is a very interesting person. So Richard and his business partner Martin run Empower Publishing, who are the publishers of my book, and also the virtual masterclass that is a product that's coming out now as well. Now his business is publishing, and he will give you plenty of strong views because he has very definite opinions on publishing. So I would recommend my colleague Richard, and I'll certainly mention it to him when I'm next speaking to him.
So can I interview him on public speaking, or he
would give you his views on public speaking? Yes, because he's been doing it himself for many years as well. Yeah.
Okay. Any other name in public speaking field that you are having in your mind?
Well, actually, the best thing to do, I think, is actually look up the Professional Speaking Association, because there are a range of people on there, and actually the Facebook page for the PSA as well is quite interesting. So there are a range of people on there with all sorts of views on public speaking. Yeah, I know dozens of them, but it's probably worth just looking them up and following them on the Facebook page, just to see what appeals to you, what people's personalities are like, and you think actually they could be interesting.
Actually, your name was recommended to me by someone, and we had a fantastic interview. So I was thinking that maybe getting a name recommendation from you might be beneficial, but I'll just look up on Professional Public Association and LinkedIn. LinkedIn is a very good source, according to me. So, sir, my interview ends here. Thank you so much for enlightening me. And this was a hell of an interview.
My pleasure. Thank you very much.